My 17-year-old daughter was banned from my brother's wedding for being too young. I didn't argue. I just said, "We won't be attending." But when Christmas came, I made one quiet change and the entire family lost it. Before I tell you about the storm, I need to tell you about the world that storm tried to destroy. My world. It wasn't a big world, but it was strong. It was built around my wife, Eleanor, Ellie, and our daughter, Serafina. Sarah. I'm Declan, by the way. Just an ordinary guy, 35 years old, who thought he had it all figured out. Ellie and we've been a team since college. She's the steady hand, the calm voice in any crisis. I'm the planner, the one who worries about the future. Together, we made a good life. A quiet life in a small town with a yard that was mostly weeds but had a few determined rose bushes. It was ours. And then there was Sarah. Sarah came into our lives 3 years ago. A whirlwind of grief wrapped in a silent, 17-year-old girl. She wasn't born to us. Her parents, Mark and Lisa, had been our closest friends. The kind of friends who become family, who you spend holidays with, who know all your secrets. And then one rainy night, they were gone. Car accident. A call from a police officer that splits your life into a before and an after. The after was a blur of legal papers, the quiet horror of a funeral, and the difficult conversations about custody. Mark and Lisa had named us as Sarah's guardians in their will. There was never a question of if. It was always how. How do we help this girl who has lost everything? The first few months were brutal. Our house, usually filled with Ellie's laughter and the sound of the TV, became quiet. Sarah would spend hours in her room, a ghost in our home. We'd leave meals outside her door. Sometimes she ate, sometimes she didn't. We didn't push. We just were there. Ellie would sit on the stairs outside her room, just reading a book, so Sarah would know she wasn't alone. I took over the gardening, something Mark and I used to do together. I'd spend hours out there, pulling weeds, trying to bring some order to a world that felt chaotic. Slowly, very slowly, the ice began to thaw. It started with small things. Sarah would come downstairs for a glass of water and linger in the kitchen for a moment longer than necessary. Then one evening, she sat on the couch while Ellie and I watched a movie. She didn't say anything, just sat there, wrapped in a blanket. It was a victory. The real breakthrough came about 6 months in. I was in the kitchen, fumbling with a jar of pickles, muttering to myself about how impossible it was to open. Suddenly, a small hand reached over, took the jar, and twisted. The lid popped open with a soft hiss. I looked up, and Sarah was standing there, a tiny, fleeting smile on her face. "It's about leverage," she said softly. Her voice was raspy from disuse. I felt my eyes well up. "Thank you, sweetie," I managed to say. That night, she ate dinner with us at the table. And about a year after she came to live with us, the moment I'll never forget. I was fixing a leaky faucet under the sink, covered in grime, when she walked in. "Can I help?" she asked. I was about to say no, but I stopped myself. "Sure," I said. "Hand me that wrench, will you?" She passed it to me. I was explaining what I was doing when she said it so quietly I almost missed it. "Thanks, Dad." I froze. My heart felt like it stopped and then restarted, beating twice as fast. I slid out from under the sink and just looked at her. She was blushing, looking at her feet. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just wiped my greasy hands on a rag and said, "You're welcome, Sarah." But inside I was shouting. She was ours. She was home. My daughter. And I swore to myself in that moment, I would do anything, absolutely anything, to protect her. I just never imagined the threat would come from my own family. To understand what happened next, you have to understand my family dynamic. It's the kind of thing you don't really see clearly until you're an adult, looking back with fresh eyes. I have one sibling, a younger brother named Lachlan. He's 5 years my junior, and for as long as I can remember, the sun has risen and set with him in my parents' eyes. It wasn't that they were cruel to me. It was more subtle than that. I was the reliable one, the steady one. Declan will be fine. He's responsible. Lachlan, on the other hand, was the charismatic one. The one with the big dreams and the even bigger personality. When I got straight A's, it was expected. When Lachlan passed a class he was struggling in, it was cause for a celebration dinner. When I got my first real job with a decent salary, my dad nodded and said, "Good, that's smart." When Lachlan landed a commission-only sales gig with a flashy title, my mom framed his business card. Growing up, I didn't resent it. It was just the way things were. I was the quiet older brother and he was the star. But as we got older, I started to see a pattern. Lachlan's charisma often masked a deep-seated insecurity, a constant need for validation. And a lot of that insecurity seemed to be pointed at me. My life wasn't flashy, but it was stable. I had a loving marriage, a home, and after Sarah came, a complete family. Lachlan had a string of failed relationships and jobs that never quite lived up to the hype. He'd make little digs, always framed as jokes. When Ellie and I bought our house, he said, "Wow, settling down for the long nap? Huh, big brother?" When we adopted Sarah, his reaction was strange. He came over for dinner, looked around our home and said, "You guys are saints. Really, taking on a teenager with, all that baggage." He said it with a smile, but his eyes were cold. He never once asked how Sarah was doing. He just talked about how disruptive it must be for us. My parents, of course, echoed his sentiments, but with a layer of feigned concern. "Declan, are you sure you're prepared for this?" My mother would ask over the phone. "A child who's been through such trauma. It's a lot to handle. You and Ellie deserve your own life." It was as if they saw Sarah not as a person, but as a burden I had foolishly taken on. A burden that distracted from the real star of the family, Lachlan. The tension simmered under the surface for a couple of years. We'd have family dinners where Lachlan would dominate the conversation with stories about his latest venture, and my parents would hang on his every word. Ellie and I would try to share something about Sarah's progress in school or a funny thing she'd said, and the topic would quickly be changed back to Lachlan. It was exhausting, but we tolerated it for the sake of peace. Then Lachlan met Beatrice. She was as flashy and image-conscious as he was. They were a perfect match, constantly posting photos of their lavish dates and weekend getaways. And soon enough, the big announcement came. Lachlan and Beatrice were getting married. The family was ecstatic. This was the event of the year, the decade even. My mother immediately went into overdrive, planning and gushing. The wedding was all anyone could talk about. And from the very beginning, Lachlan made it clear this wasn't just going to be a wedding. It was going to be a production. A high-end, exclusive event, he called it. An event, as we would soon find out, that had a very specific, very cruel guest list. About a month after the engagement announcement, my phone rang. It was Lachlan. His tone was different from usual, less bravado, more strategic. "Hey, December. Got a minute?" he asked. "Sure, what's up?" I was in my garage, trying to organize a mess of tools. "So, Beatrice and I were just going over the wedding budget," he began, sighing dramatically. "Man, you wouldn't believe how much things cost. The venue, the caterer, it's insane." I just listened. I knew where this was going. It was a dance we'd done before, though usually on a much smaller scale. Him needing a few $100 to cover rent until a big commission check came in. "We want everything to be perfect, he continued. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. We don't want to cut corners. It's not just for us. It's for the whole family. A day everyone will remember." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. "The thing is," he said, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper, "we're a little short on the initial deposits. We've got the money coming, of course. Beatrice has some investments maturing. But the venue needs their check by the end of the month, or we lose the date." Here it comes, I thought. I was wondering, and listen, if you can't, I totally get it, but could you possibly loan us some cash? Just to tide us over. It's a big ask, I know. We're talking about $10,000. I almost dropped the wrench I was holding. 10,000. That wasn't a few hundred for rent. That was a serious amount of money. It was a significant chunk of the savings Ellie and I had been carefully building, money I had mentally earmarked for Sarah's college fund. Wow, Lachlan. That's a lot, I said honestly. I know, he said quickly, his voice full of practiced sincerity. And I wouldn't ask if it wasn't an emergency. I swear you'll have it back with interest as soon as Beatrice's funds clear. Think of it as an investment in family happiness. You'd be saving the day, man. Literally saving the wedding. I was hesitant. A voice in the back of my head, the practical, cautious part of me, was screaming no. But another voice, the part that had been conditioned for 35 years to be the responsible older brother, the one who smooths things over, was whispering, "He's your brother. It's his wedding." I told him I needed to talk to Ellie. Ellie, bless her heart, was even more skeptical than I was. $10,000, Declan? To Lachlan? When was the last time he paid you back for anything without you having to ask 10 times? She was right, but the idea of being the reason my brother's perfect day was ruined. The guilt trip my parents would lay on me. It felt like too much to bear. So I convinced her. And in doing so, I convinced myself. It's his wedding, I argued. This is different. He wouldn't screw us over on this. So I called Lachlan back. I told him we'd do it. The relief in his voice was palpable. He laid it on thick, calling me the best brother in the world. A lifesaver, promising me front row seats and a special toast at the wedding. The next day, I transferred the money. $10,000 gone from our account. I felt a knot in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I had done the right thing. I had been the good brother. I had no idea I had just paid for the knife that he was about to plunge into my back. A few weeks after the money transfer, the official wedding invitations arrived. They were just as ostentatious as I'd expected, thick, cream-colored cardstock with gold leaf lettering. Tucked inside was a smaller card with details about the reception. And at the bottom, in elegant script, were the words, "We respectfully request an adults-only celebration." Ellie and I looked at it and didn't think much of it. A no-kids wedding was pretty common. We figured it meant no toddlers running around the dance floor, no babies crying during the vows. Sarah was 17. She was practically an adult herself. More mature than many adults I know, certainly more mature than my brother on most days. We just assumed the rule applied to younger children. We RSVP'd for 3, myself, Ellie, and Serafina. That was my mistake. Assuming. About a week later, my phone buzzed. It was Lachlan. No friendly greeting this time. His voice was clipped and businesslike. "Hey, I got your RSVP," he said. "You put down 3 people." "Yeah," I said, confused. "Me, Ellie, and Sarah." There was a short, cold silence on the other end. "Right. About that," Lachlan said. "You saw the card, right? The adults-only part." "Yeah, but I figured that meant little kids," I said, a sense of dread starting to creep in. "Sarah's 17. She's not going to be making a scene." "Declan," he said, his voice laced with condescending patience. "Adults only means 18 and over, no exceptions." I thought that was clear. I was stunned. I actually had to sit down. "You're kidding me, right? You're telling me Sarah can't come to her uncle's wedding because she's a few months shy of her 18th birthday? That's insane." "It's not insane, it's our wedding," he snapped back, his tone hardening. "Beatrice and I have a specific vision for the event. We want a certain atmosphere. It's a party for our friends, a grown-up affair. Having a teenager there just changes the whole vibe." The vibe? He was excluding his own niece over a vibe? "Lachlan, this is Sarah we're talking about," I pleaded, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's family. She's quiet. She's respectful. She'll probably just sit with us the whole time. Nobody will even notice she's there." "I'll notice," he said flatly. "And Beatrice will notice. Look, it's not personal against Sarah. It's just a rule. A simple black and white rule. No one under 18. It makes things fair for everyone." Fair for everyone? How was this fair? I could feel the anger starting to bubble up inside me. Hot and sharp. This felt like more than just a rule. It felt targeted. It felt personal. "So you're really going to ban your niece from your wedding?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "I'm not banning anyone," he said, his voice dripping with false reason. I'm upholding the rules of the event we're paying a fortune for. An event, I might add, that you helped make possible. And there it was. The $10,000 thrown back in my face. Not as a debt to be repaid, but as a tool to shut me up. He was using my own generosity against me. Don't make this a bigger deal than it is, Declan, he said, his voice softening into a manipulative purr. It's just one party. Sarah will understand. We'll celebrate with her some other time. Just respect our wishes on this. For our big day. I didn't know what to say. The call ended with him acting like he'd been the reasonable one, and I'd been the one making things difficult. I hung up the phone, my hand shaking. This wasn't about a rule. This was about something else, something uglier. And I had a sick feeling that this was only the beginning. Reeling from the call with Lachlan, I did what I had always done when our family had a problem. I called my parents. I thought, foolishly, that they would be the voice of reason. I expected them to be shocked, to say, "Of course Sarah should be there. We'll talk to Lachlan." The conversation started with my mother. I explained the situation, how Lachlan was invoking a strict under-18 rule to exclude Sarah. Her initial reaction was a sigh. Not a sigh of sympathy, but one of weary annoyance. "Oh, Declan," she said, "are you really going to make a fuss about this?" "A fuss? Mom, he's uninviting his niece from his wedding. Of course I'm going to make a fuss." "Well, it is his and Beatrice's day," she said, her voice already taking on that familiar defensive tone she used whenever Lachlan was criticized. "They have a right to have the wedding they want. If they want an adult atmosphere, we should respect that." "An adult atmosphere? Mom, she's 17, not 7. What kind of atmosphere is she going to ruin?" I asked, my frustration mounting. Then my father got on the line. He must have been listening on speaker. His approach was more direct and far more brutal. "Declan, let's be honest here," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "It's not just about her age, is it? We all know Serafina has been through a lot. She's a very sensitive girl." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What does that have to do with anything?" "A wedding is an emotional event," he continued, as if explaining a complex mathematical formula to a child. "All the toasts, the speeches. It could be very triggering for her. All that talk about family and forever. It might bring up a lot of her issues." Issues? He was talking about my daughter's grief for her dead parents as issues. My mother chimed in, her voice dripping with faux concern. "He's right, honey. Lachlan and Beatrice are probably just being considerate. They don't want to put Sarah in an uncomfortable position. And frankly, they don't want to risk a scene. You know how she can get quiet and withdrawn. They don't want that kind of energy at their celebration." A scene? My daughter, who was the kindest, most gentle soul I knew, was now being painted as some kind of emotional time bomb who might ruin the wedding with her sadness. I felt a hot rage course through me. Are you listening to yourselves? You're blaming Sarah for the trauma she endured. You're punishing her for being a grieving child. She is not a liability. She is our daughter. She's your adopted daughter, Declan, my father said, the words hitting me like a physical blow. And that's wonderful, but you can't expect everyone to just forget her past. Lachlan has to think about all his guests, about creating a happy, carefree environment. He can't let one person's delicate situation dictate the terms of his entire wedding. They were twisting it, making my brother's cruelty seem like thoughtfulness, and my defense of my daughter seem like selfishness. They accused me of trying to make Lachlan's wedding all about me and my unconventional family. They said I was jealous of my brother's happiness and was looking for a reason to cause drama. You're not thinking about your brother at all, my mother said, her voice sharp with accusation. You're thinking about yourself. Do you have any idea how much this wedding means to him? To all of us? And here you are, picking a fight over something so trivial. You need to apologize to Lachlan for making him feel bad. Apologize? I was supposed to apologize? I hung up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't just Lachlan. It was all of them. They had never truly seen Sarah as one of us. To them, she was an outsider, a problem. a footnote in the grand story of their perfect family. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just fighting my brother. I was fighting my entire family, and I was completely, utterly alone. The air in our house was thick with unspoken anger after I got off the phone with my parents. Ellie had heard my side of the conversation, her face growing tighter with every word I said. When I finally hung up, she didn't say anything right away. She just came over and put her arms around me. I leaned into her, the rage and hurt momentarily giving way to a profound sense of exhaustion. "I can't believe them," I whispered into her shoulder. I can't. "I can," she said quietly, her voice firm. "I've seen the way they look at her, Declan, like she's a project you took on, not their granddaughter." We stood there for a long time, just holding each other in the middle of our living room. The silence wasn't empty. It was filled with a shared understanding. We didn't need to debate what to do next. We both knew. The only question was how to say it. That evening, we sat down with Sarah. This was the part one dreaded most. I didn't want this ugliness to touch her. I wanted to shield her from the casual cruelty of people who were supposed to love her. We sat on the couch, one on each side of her. I took a deep breath. "Sarah, honey," I started. "We need to talk about Uncle Lachlan's wedding." She looked at me, her eyes wide and curious. "Is something wrong?" "There's a rule," Ellie said gently. "They've decided that no one under 18 can attend. And we think it's a very unfair rule." I watched Sarah's face. I saw the flicker of understanding, followed immediately by a shuttered expression. It was the look she used to have in the early days, a mask she put on to hide her pain. She immediately tried to make it easy for us. "Oh," she said, her voice small. "It's okay. Really. I don't mind. You guys should still go. It's your brother, Dad. It's important." She was trying to protect us from feeling bad. My 17-year-old daughter, who was being deliberately excluded, was worried about our feelings. The injustice of it all felt like a physical weight on my chest. I reached out and took her hand. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I expected it to be. "It's not okay. It's not okay at all. And we are not going without you." Ellie chimed in, her hand on Sarah's other arm. "We are a family, sweetie. All three of us. We go together or we don't go at all. And in this case, we're not going." Sarah looked back and forth between us, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But they'll be so mad at you," she whispered. "Let them be mad," I said, my voice filled with a conviction I hadn't felt in years. "Their anger is not more important than you. You are more important. You are our priority. Always." A single tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. She just leaned forward and hugged both of us, burying her face between us. And we sat there, a small island of a family, holding on tight. The next morning, I called Lachlan. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Lachlan, I'm calling to update our RSVP," I said, my voice calm and level. "Oh yeah," he said, a hint of smugness in his tone. "Decided to be reasonable, did you?" "Yes, I did," I said. "I've decided that since our daughter, Serafina, is not welcome at your wedding, then neither are we. We will not be attending." The silence on the other end was immediate and absolute. The smugness vanished, replaced by sputtering disbelief. "What? Are you serious?" he finally stammered. "Completely serious," I replied. "We are a family, Lachlan. All or nothing. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Have a wonderful wedding." And with that, I hung up before he could respond. I set the phone down on the counter. The house was quiet. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. I had made my stand. I had chosen my family. My real family. The fallout from my decision was immediate and nuclear. My phone started blowing up with calls and texts from my parents and Lachlan. I didn't answer. The messages ranged from furious to pleading to guilt-tripping. Lachlan accused me of being a jealous, vindictive monster trying to ruin his life. My mother sent long, rambling texts about how I was tearing the family apart and breaking her heart. My father was blunt. "You've made your choice. Don't come crawling back. We weathered the storm together. Ellie was my rock, Sarah was brave, and we turned our phones off. The weekend of the wedding arrived, and instead of plastering on fake smiles at a party where our daughter was unwelcome, we created our own celebration. We took a road trip to the mountains, a place we'd been meaning to visit for years. We spent the day hiking, breathing in the crisp, clean air. We had a picnic by a lake, skipping stones across the water. That evening we rented a cabin, built a fire, and roasted marshmallows, telling stupid jokes and laughing until our sides hurt. It was perfect. It was real. For the first time, it felt like we had truly left the toxicity of my extended family behind. We were driving home on Sunday afternoon, feeling refreshed and connected, when my phone, which I'd finally turned back on, rang. It was a number I didn't recognize at first, but then I realized it was my cousin, Mark. Mark was a good guy, always stayed out of the family drama. He was the son of my mom's sister. "Hey Mark, what's up?" I answered, putting the phone on speaker so Ellie could hear. "Declan," he said, and his voice was tight with anger. "I'm at your brother's wedding right now. I'm standing out on the patio because I couldn't stay inside another minute without calling you. Is everything okay?" I asked, a sense of unease creeping back in. "No, man, it's not okay," he said, his voice low and furious. "You know that whole no one under 18 rule? The reason you guys aren't here. Yeah, it's a complete load of crap." I felt my knuckles go white on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" "I'm looking right at him," Mark said, his voice dripping with disgust. "Daniel, you know, Beatrice's brother's kid? The one who's always getting into trouble? He's here. And I know for a fact he's only 16 because my son is on the same soccer team. He's standing over by the bar, trying to sneak a drink, laughing with his friends." The car was silent. Ellie and I just looked at each other. The blood drained from my face. It was one thing to suspect it, to feel it in your gut. It was another thing to have it confirmed in cold, hard detail. "It's not just him," Mark continued, his anger growing. "There are a couple of other teenagers here too, kids of Beatrice's rich friends. The rule wasn't a rule, Declan. It was an excuse. It was specifically for Sarah. They lied to you. They made up a rule just to exclude your daughter." I had to pull the car over. I just sat there on the shoulder of the highway, the engine idling, staring at nothing. The beautiful, peaceful weekend we just had felt like a distant memory. The ugliness had found us again. Ellie took the phone. "Thanks for telling us, Mark. We appreciate it." "I'm sorry, guys," he said. "This is messed up. I just thought you deserved to know the truth." After she hung up, we didn't speak for a long time. The hurt was so profound it was physical. They hadn't just excluded her. They had orchestrated a lie. They had made my daughter the specific target of their malice, and then lied to our faces about it. I looked in the rearview mirror at Sarah in the back seat. She was looking out the window, but I could see the reflection of her face. She had heard everything. A single tear was tracing a path down her cheek. And in that moment, the hurt inside me curdled into something else. Something cold and hard and patient. They had drawn a line. They had declared war on my daughter. And I knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The months after the wedding were a strange, cold war. My parents and Lachlan acted as if my family had simply ceased to exist. There were no calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. They posted hundreds of pictures from the perfect wedding, and in every single one, everyone was smiling, laughing, performing happiness. It was a carefully curated fiction, and we were conspicuously absent from it. We didn't reach out either. The line had been drawn, and we had no intention of crossing it. We focused on us. Sarah started her senior year of high school and poured herself into her studies and her art. She was thriving, and seeing her happy was the only thing that mattered. We were building a life, a real one, far from the shadows of their judgment. Then, as the leaves began to fall and the air grew crisp, the inevitable email arrived. It was from my mother. The subject line read, "Christmas plans." The email was cheerful, breezy, and utterly devoid of any acknowledgement of the massive rift in our family. It was a masterclass in denial. It outlined the usual plan: Christmas Eve dinner at my parents' house, followed by gift exchange on Christmas morning. The centerpiece of our Christmas morning tradition was the family's Secret Santa. It was a big deal, with a $100 spending limit, and everyone participated. And, as luck would have it, this year the task of organizing it had fallen to me. I had been assigned the job months ago, before the wedding, before everything fell apart. My mother's email ended with a pointedly cheerful line: "Declan, looking forward to you running the Secret Santa again this year. Let us know the pairings soon." Ellie read the email over my shoulder and scoffed. "Unbelievable. They really think they can just pretend none of that happened." "They don't just think it," I said, a slow, cold idea beginning to form in my mind. "They expect it. They expect me to be the good son, the responsible brother, and just fall in line. They expect me to smooth it all over so they can have their perfect little Christmas." I sat there, looking at the screen. For months, I had been carrying around this cold, hard knot of anger. I had channeled it into protecting my family, into building a better life for us. But it was still there, a patient, waiting thing. And now they had just handed me the perfect opportunity. Not for a loud, dramatic confrontation, but for something much quieter, much more effective. That evening, after Ellie and Sarah were asleep, I went to my office. I pulled up a spreadsheet and typed in the names of every single person in the extended family who participated in Secret Santa. My mom, my dad, my aunt, my uncle, their kids, and, of course, Lachlan and Beatrice. I listed them all out, a roster of the people who had stood by and watched, or actively participated, as my daughter was intentionally hurt. Then, I opened an online name-drawing tool. I carefully typed every single name from my list into the generator. Except for 3. I didn't enter my name. I didn't enter Ellie's name. And I didn't enter Serafina's name. Our small family of 3 was simply absent. We didn't exist in the world of the family gift exchange. I clicked the button to draw the names. The algorithm did its work, pairing everyone up. I reviewed the list. Lachlan would be buying a gift for my aunt. My mother would be buying for Beatrice. It was perfect. A closed loop of holiday cheer that we were no longer a part of. I drafted a simple, cheerful email, copying my mother's tone exactly. "Hi everyone. So excited for Christmas. Here are the Secret Santa pairings for this year. Happy shopping." I attached the list of pairings. I read it over one last time. It was such a small, simple act of omission. But I knew it wouldn't be seen that way. It was a quiet declaration. It was a mirror reflecting their own actions right back at them. I hit send. And then, I leaned back in my chair and waited. The silence after I sent the email was deafening. For 3 full days there was nothing. No replies, no calls. It was so quiet it almost made me nervous. I started to wonder if maybe they hadn't noticed. Maybe they were so wrapped up in their own worlds that our absence from a simple list had gone completely unseen. I should have known better. It was the calm before the hurricane. The call came on a Thursday evening. I was helping Sarah with her calculus homework at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed, and the screen lit up with Lachlan's name. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again, and again. On the 4th try, I sighed, excused myself, and walked into the other room to answer it. "What do you want, Lachlan?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. "The list," he said, his voice tight and strained. "The Secret Santa list." I looked at it. "You're not on it. Ellie's not on it. She's not on it." He couldn't even bring himself to say Sarah's name. "That's correct," I said calmly. There was a pause, as if he was processing my complete lack of surprise. "Is this a joke?" he asked, his voice rising. "Did you forget to add yourselves? What kind of idiot forgets to add himself to his own list?" "It's not a mistake, Lachlan," I said, keeping my tone perfectly level. "We're not participating this year. That's when the dam broke." "Not participating?" he shouted, his voice cracking with rage. "What the hell does that mean? Not participating? It's a family tradition. We've done it every year since we were kids. You don't just get to decide you're not participating." Well, I just did, I replied, my calmness seeming to fuel his fury. This is about the wedding, isn't it? He spat. You're still holding on to that? My God. Declan, are you that petty? You're going to ruin Christmas for the entire family because you didn't get your way months ago. Ruin Christmas? I almost laughed. By not buying you $100 gift? Is your holiday spirit really that fragile? This isn't about the gift, you moron. It's about the principle, he screamed. It's about being a family. It's about tradition. Something you clearly don't give a damn about. Oh, I care about family, I said, my voice dropping, the cold anger I'd been holding on to finally seeping through. I care about it a great deal, which is why this conversation is over. I was about to hang up when I heard another voice in the background. My mother. She must have been there with him, listening in, waiting for her moment. Declan, don't you hang up this phone, she commanded, her voice shrill. Your brother is right. What you are doing is unbelievably selfish and cruel. You are punishing all of us. You're trying to make Christmas miserable just to prove a point. What point do you think I'm trying to prove, Mom? I asked, genuinely curious to hear her twisted logic. That you're a victim. That we're all so mean to you and your precious little family, she cried. Well, grow up. Sometimes in a family you have to compromise. You have to forgive. You don't just burn everything to the ground over one little disagreement. One little disagreement. Banning my daughter from a major family event after orchestrating a lie was now just a little disagreement. The delusion was breathtaking. I knew then that there was no reasoning with them. There was only the truth. And it was time they heard it. Mom, Lachlan, listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice low and steady. The time for yelling was over. This was going to be a lesson. I'm not punishing anyone, and I'm certainly not trying to ruin Christmas. I am simply following the new family rules. The rules that you wrote. There was silence on the other end. I could hear their confused breathing. What are you talking about? Lachlan finally muttered. We didn't write any rules. Oh, you absolutely did, I said, letting the words hang in the air. At your wedding, you and Beatrice, with Mom and Dad's full support, established a very important precedent. You taught me that family is not an absolute concept. You taught me that there are some family events where certain members are not welcome. You made it very clear that our family unit of 3 is not, in fact, a package deal. You decided you could invite part of our family, but not all of it. I paused, letting them absorb the logic. I could almost feel their minds scrambling, trying to find a way to argue, but finding none. So, I'm just applying your logic, I continued, my voice as cold and sharp as glass. I'm honoring the boundary that you set. The Secret Santa is a family event, right? A tradition? Well, since you've already established that my entire family isn't welcome at your family events, I've decided to respectfully decline participation in this one on your behalf. You can't have it both ways. You don't get to break us apart when it's convenient for you, and then demand we act like a happy, whole family when you want to play games and exchange gifts. The phone was dead silent. I had taken their own twisted reasoning and turned it back on them like a weapon. They were cornered by their own hypocrisy. And then I decided to deliver the final blow. The one that had been sitting in my back pocket for months. And speaking of things that are owed, I said, my tone shifting to something even colder. Lachlan, I believe you still owe me $10,000. The money I loaned you so you could have your perfect day. The day where you banned my daughter. You promised you'd pay it back as soon as Beatrice's funds cleared. It's been 6 months. I haven't seen a dime. I heard a sharp intake of breath, I think from my mother. Lachlan was speechless. He had probably thought I'd be too nice to ever bring it up. He was wrong. So let's make a deal, I said, laying out my terms. You can have your Secret Santa. You can have your perfect family Christmas. I don't want any part of it. But I want my money. All of it. You have until the end of the year. If I don't see it, my next call will be to a lawyer to discuss my options. Do you understand me? Lachlan started to sputter, trying to form a defense. It's been a tight few months. I don't care. I cut him off. You had enough money for a lavish honeymoon. You have enough for a $100 gift for Aunt Carol. You have enough to pay me back. Get it done. Declan, you can't be serious, my mother whimpered. Threatening your own brother with lawyers? At Christmas. He stopped being just my brother when he betrayed my daughter, I said, the finality of it all settling in my own heart. He became a bad investment. Now I'm just collecting on a debt. Don't call me again until the money is in my account. And with that, I hung up. I stood in the quiet room, my heart pounding, but not with anger or fear. It was pounding with the exhilarating rhythm of freedom. I had finally said it all. I had taken back my power. The game was over, and I had won. The immediate aftermath of that phone call was a chaotic explosion that I only heard about secondhand. My cousin Mark called me later that night. He had received a frantic, hysterical call from my mother, who had apparently called every family member on the Secret Santa list to complain about how I was a monster who was blackmailing my brother and ruining Christmas. According to Mark, it backfired spectacularly. When my aunt and uncle heard the full story, the fake no kids rule, the deliberate exclusion of Sarah, and the $10,000 loan, they were disgusted. They called my parents and told them that if our family wasn't participating in Secret Santa, then they weren't either. My other cousin quickly followed suit. What was supposed to be a united front against me quickly crumbled into a civil war, with my parents and Lachlan finding themselves on a rapidly shrinking island of self-righteous indignation. The whole pathetic affair ended with the official cancellation of the family Secret Santa. There was too much animosity, too much drama. The tradition Lachlan had accused me of destroying had been destroyed by his own actions, exposed to the light of day. I felt nothing but a quiet, calm sense of vindication. I hadn't set out to blow up Christmas. I had just refused to keep playing their toxic games. I had held up a mirror, and they had shattered it themselves. I walked back into the kitchen where Ellie and Sarah were. The remnants of the calculus homework were still on the table. They both looked up at me, their faces etched with concern. "Everything okay?" Ellie asked softly. I looked at my wife, my partner, my rock. And I looked at my daughter, this incredible, resilient young woman who had been through hell and back and still had the capacity for so much love. This was my family. This was my world. A real smile, the first genuine, unburdened smile in months, spread across my face. "Everything," I said, "is perfect." I sat down at the table, picked up the pencil, and looked at the page of equations. "All right, Sarah," I said, "let's figure out this problem." And for the first time, it felt like we finally had. Thank you for staying with me until now. Please show your support by liking this video and typing 1 in the comments below. It lets me know that you've given me a like and are here with me on this journey. Your encouragement is a huge source of motivation. Comment number 1 below and stay with me as I continue my story. That Christmas was the quietest we'd ever had, and it was also the best. The cloud of obligation and dread that usually hung over the holidays was gone. There were no tense dinners to navigate, no passive-aggressive comments to endure. There was just peace. We decided to start our own traditions. Instead of a big, materialistic gift exchange, we each chose a charity to donate to. On Christmas Eve, instead of going to my parents' house, we volunteered at a local soup kitchen, serving dinner to people who had far less than we did. It was humbling and grounding, and it put all of our family drama into stark perspective. On Christmas morning, we woke up late, made pancakes, and watched old holiday movies in our pajamas. Sarah gave us a beautiful, framed charcoal drawing she'd made of the three of us, based on a photo from our trip to the mountains. It was the most precious gift I'd ever received. We didn't need a house full of relatives to feel the Christmas spirit. We had more than enough right there in our living room. "What are you talking about?" Lachlan finally muttered. "We didn't write any rules." "Oh, you absolutely did," I said, letting the words hang in the air. "At your wedding, you and Beatrice, with Mom and Dad's full support, established a very important precedent. You taught me that family is not an absolute concept. You taught me that there are some family events where certain members are not welcome. You made it very clear that our family unit of 3 is not, in fact, a package deal. You decided you could invite part of our family, but not all of it. I paused, letting them absorb the logic. I could almost feel their minds scrambling, trying to find a way to argue, but finding none. So, I'm just applying your logic, I continued. My voice as cold and sharp as glass. I'm honoring the boundary that you set. The Secret Santa is a family event, right? A tradition? Well, since you've already established that my entire family isn't welcome at your family events, I've decided to respectfully decline participation in this one on your behalf. You can't have it both ways. You don't get to break us apart when it's convenient for you, and then demand we act like a happy, whole family when you want to play games and exchange gifts. The phone was dead silent. I had taken their own twisted reasoning and turned it back on them like a weapon. They were cornered by their own hypocrisy. And then I decided to deliver the final blow. The one that had been sitting in my back pocket for months. And speaking of things that are owed, I said, my tone shifting to something even colder. Lachlan, I believe you still owe me $10,000. The money I loaned you so you could have your perfect day. The day where you banned my daughter. You promised you'd pay it back as soon as Beatrice's funds cleared. It's been 6 months. I haven't seen a dime. I heard a sharp intake of breath, I think from my mother. Lachlan was speechless. He had probably thought I'd be too nice to ever bring it up. He was wrong. So let's make a deal, I said, laying out my terms. You can have your Secret Santa. You can have your perfect family Christmas. I don't want any part of it. But I want my money. All of it. You have until the end of the year. If I don't see it, my next call will be to a lawyer to discuss my options. Do you understand me? Lachlan started to sputter, trying to form a defense. You. It's been a tight few months. I don't care. I cut him off. You had enough money for a lavish honeymoon. You have enough for a $100 gift for Aunt Carol. You have enough to pay me back. Get it done. Declan, you can't be serious, my mother whimpered. Threatening your own brother with lawyers? At Christmas. He stopped being just my brother when he betrayed my daughter, I said, the finality of it all settling in my own heart. He became a bad investment. Now I'm just collecting on a debt. Don't call me again until the money is in my account. And with that, I hung up. I stood in the quiet room, my heart pounding, but not with anger or fear. It was pounding with the exhilarating rhythm of freedom. I had finally said it all. I had taken back my power. The game was over, and I had won. The immediate aftermath of that phone call was a chaotic explosion that I only heard about secondhand. My cousin Mark called me later that night. He had received a frantic, hysterical call from my mother, who had apparently called every family member on the Secret Santa list to complain about how I was a monster who was blackmailing my brother and ruining Christmas. According to Mark, it backfired spectacularly. When my aunt and uncle heard the full story, the fake no kids rule, the deliberate exclusion of Sarah, and the $10,000 loan, they were disgusted. They called my parents and told them that if our family wasn't participating in Secret Santa, then they weren't either. My other cousin quickly followed suit. What was supposed to be a united front against me quickly crumbled into a civil war, with my parents and Lachlan finding themselves on a rapidly shrinking island of self-righteous indignation. The whole pathetic affair ended with the official cancellation of the family Secret Santa. There was too much animosity, too much drama. The tradition Lachlan had accused me of destroying had been destroyed by his own actions, exposed to the light of day. I felt nothing but a quiet, calm sense of vindication. I hadn't set out to blow up Christmas. I had just refused to keep playing their toxic games. I had held up a mirror, and they had shattered it themselves. I walked back into the kitchen where Ellie and Sarah were. The remnants of the calculus homework were still on the table. They both looked up at me, their faces etched with concern. "Everything okay?" Ellie asked softly. I looked at my wife, my partner, my rock. And I looked at my daughter, this incredible, resilient young woman who had been through hell and back and still had the capacity for so much love. This was my family. This was my world. A real smile, the first genuine, unburdened smile in months, spread across my face. "Everything," I said, "is perfect." I sat down at the table, picked up the pencil, and looked at the page of equations. "All right, Sarah," I said. "Let's figure out this problem." And for the first time, it felt like we finally had. Thank you for staying with me until now. Please show your support by liking this video and typing 1 in the comments below. It lets me know that you've given me a like and are here with me on this journey. Your encouragement is a huge source of motivation. Comment number 1 below and stay with me as I continue my story. That Christmas was the quietest we'd ever had, and it was also the best. The cloud of obligation and dread that usually hung over the holidays was gone. There were no tense dinners to navigate, no passive-aggressive comments to endure. There was just peace. We decided to start our own traditions. Instead of a big, materialistic gift exchange, we each chose a charity to donate to. On Christmas Eve, instead of going to my parents' house, we volunteered at a local soup kitchen, serving dinner to people who had far less than we did. It was humbling and grounding, and it put all of our family drama into stark perspective. On Christmas morning, we woke up late, made pancakes, and watched old holiday movies in our pajamas. Sarah gave us a beautiful, framed charcoal drawing she'd made of the three of us, based on a photo from our trip to the mountains. It was the most precious gift I'd ever received. We didn't need a house full of relatives to feel the Christmas spirit. We had more than enough right there in our living room. I looked at Ellie, and she gave me a small, supportive nod. I took a deep breath. "I appreciate you coming here and saying that," I said, my voice even in calm. "And I accept your apology. For my own peace of mind, I accept it." My mother's face lit up with relief. "Oh, Declan, thank you. But," I interrupted gently, holding up a hand, "you need to understand. Things can't go back to the way they were. You say you were wrong, but I need to know you understand why you were wrong. You didn't just take the wrong side in an argument. You chose to deliberately hurt a child. Our child. And you defended that choice. The trust that was broken. It's not something that can be fixed overnight with one apology." Their faces fell. This wasn't the easy reconciliation they had been hoping for. "Our family, me, Ellie, and Sarah, is my priority now," I finished. "A relationship with you has to work around that. It will be on our terms, with clear boundaries. It's the only way forward." They didn't argue. They just nodded, looking defeated. They stayed for a few more minutes, the conversation stilted and painful. When they left, I felt no triumph. Just a quiet, somber sense of closure. I had forgiven them, not for them, but for me. It was the final step in letting go of the past. The years that followed were peaceful. We built a new, tentative relationship with my parents. It was polite, distant, and carefully managed. We saw them on major holidays for a few hours at a time. They were always on their best behavior, but the old warmth was gone, replaced by a permanent, careful courtesy. It was sad in a way, but it was also necessary. The boundaries we had set kept our family safe, and that was all that mattered. Lachlan, I heard, moved out of state after his divorce. He took another sales job, chasing another big promise. We never spoke again. Sometimes I wondered if he ever felt a shred of remorse, but I suspected he didn't. Some people just move through life leaving a wake of destruction, completely oblivious to the damage they cause. But my life, our life, was full. Sarah flourished at art school. She came home for holidays and summers, her confidence and talent growing with each passing semester. She was a brilliant, funny, compassionate young woman, and being her father was the greatest honor of my life. One evening, during her final year of college, I found a letter waiting for me on my desk. It was from her. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. "Dear Dad," it began. "I'm writing this because there are some things that are easier to say on paper. I've been thinking a lot lately about my life and about how I got here. And I know, with a certainty that fills my whole heart, that I wouldn't be here without you and Mom. You didn't just give me a home when I had nowhere else to go. You gave me a family. You taught me what unconditional love really looks like. I know what happened with your family was hard for you. I know you sacrificed relationships for me. I remember that day in the car, after you found out they had lied. I felt so small, so worthless, like I was the cause of all this pain. But then I looked at you, and you weren't looking at me with pity. You were looking at me with a fierceness, a protectiveness that made me feel like the most important person in the world. You stood up for me when no one else would. You fought for me. That single act of courage gave me the strength to start healing. You taught me that I was worthy of being fought for. Thank you for being my dad. Thank you for choosing me. I love you more than words can say. I finished the letter, tears streaming down my face. Ellie came in and read it over my shoulder, her own eyes filling with tears. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, and we just stood there, holding the letter that was worth more than any inheritance, more than any apology. I thought back to the man I used to be, the one who tried so hard to keep the peace, to please everyone. He was gone. In his place was a man who understood the true meaning of family. Family isn't about blood. It's not about obligation or tradition. It's about who you fight for, and who fights for you. And in that, I was the richest man in the world. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It means the world to me that you've stayed until the very end. What do you think is the true meaning of family? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like and subscribing for more.